Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Corvus Cornix, and welcome to Closet Movie Rambles, where I talk about all the movies that I found in my closet while cleaning. This week's movie is Dracula, the Universal movie from 1931. It is about 1 hour and 40 minutes long, and the movie starts with a group of people in a wagon going to a small town, and one of the passengers is Rainfield, this real estate agent, and he's going to meet Dracula at a place called Borgo Pass, and the people in town advise him not to go because of the things that's been happening in this part of Romania. But he doesn't care, he goes anyway, and he meets up with Dracula in this wagon. Actually, it's Dracula that's driving the wagon, but he doesn't know this yet. So as Renfield enters the castle of Dracula, he meets the Count himself, and the castle hasn't been cleaned in a while, so there are cobwebs and spiders. So he talks to the Count, but they're interrupted by a howling wolf, and the Count says, "Listen to them, children of the night, what music they make." And then Dracula gets his paper for Carfax Abbey in London, this estate that Rainfield apparently has been, he's leasing or selling to Dracula. So while this is happening, Rainfield cuts his finger on one of the papers, a paper cut, and he draws some blood from his finger. And the Count, of course, because he's a vampire, wants the blood, but he's repelled by Rainfield's cross that he got from a townswoman a few scenes earlier. And then Renfield is offered some wine and food, and he passes out on the ground. And then 3 vampire ladies enters the room, and Dracula wards him off, and he starts to feast on Renfield. So later on a ship, Dracula has been transported to London to Carfax Abbey, and Renfield at this point has turned into his faithful servant. And most of the crew aboard the ship are either dead or fed upon on arrival, and Renfield managed to get captured into like a sanitarium because he's obviously insane. Dracula walks the streets of London feeding on a woman, and then he goes to watch a symphony where he meets up or is introduced to Mina, Harker, and Lucy, and there's also a doctor there. Later, Dracula turns into a bat and he enters Lucy's bedchambers. And then cutting to the sanitarium where Renfield is sad that he can't eat bugs and spiders, which I thought was kind of funny. There's this dialogue with the keeper or the warden there. And then Van Helsing figures out that they're dealing with vampires. He has examined the necks of the victims, so they have 2 bite marks on their necks. Later, Dracula enters Mina's bedchambers and she's bitten. And the next morning, Van Helsing is there for some reason and he figures out that Mina has been bitten. So then, at this point, it's kind of funny. Dracula just enters the room as a gentleman, not, imposing as a vampire. And Van Helsing realized that he doesn't have a reflection in the mirror, and he tells Harker this. And then he confronts Dracula about it, and he leaves. And then Van Helsing has to explain to Harker what a vampire is, basically the lore about wolfbane and whatnot. So after this, Mina is found outside, collapsed in a yard. And also Lucy has turned into a full vampire now. She's out hunting small children in the night. I think they read about it in the newspaper, which makes it even more creepier. And then Helsing rigs Mina's room with wolfbane because he figures that's the only way they can stop Dracula from taking her completely. And at some point, Renfield has managed to escape the sanitarium and he lets Dracula into the house. And then Helsing talks to Dracula, and Dracula tries to use his vampiric powers to kind of dominate his weak mind, but it doesn't work because Van Helsing's mind is not weak. And then Van Helsing just uses a cross on him and Dracula flees. And then Van Helsing goes to see Harker and Mina. He knows that she's about to turn. She confesses everything to Helsing about her being with Dracula. And later Dracula uses his powers to control one of the servant girls to let him into the house once again, which seems to be a running theme at this point. And then Harker and Van Helsing follows Renfield to Dracula's lair. Dracula has Mina with him, and once he knows that Renfield has led him there, he actually just kills him outright and he escapes to the basement. So Van Helsing and Harker goes down there and then find Dracula in his coffin resting, and he gets staked through the heart. Dracula gets staked through the heart. And when this happens, Mina turns back to normal, and that's pretty much the end of the movie. So what do I think about this movie? Dracula from 1931. It's a good movie. I have a soft spot for black and white movies, and it's a classic, obviously. So the plan for this new layout, this new Tupa review format was that I have this Blu-ray box with all the classic Monster Universal movies, or the most famous one, and it's actually in a coffin, which I thought was cool, and it has a lot of extra features in it. So I will be doing this until Halloween. That's the plan. So this Blu-ray has a lot of extra features. It has documentaries, it has some commentary tracks from the crew and the directors and whatnot, and it's a good thing. And it also has the second version, because during the shooting of this movie, there were actually two themes, two different casts and two different film crews. One was filming in English and the other in Spanish, so one were filming during the day and the other by night. So the better paced version is actually the Spanish one, and it has a different cut, and it actually looks a little better from what I've seen. And the English one, the version I should say, is the more known one with Bela Lugosi, but the Spanish one is just different and more interesting. There's this scene when Renfield enters the Castle Dracula for the first time, and in the English version there's this spider that's supposed to crawl up the web because it spun its web through across the stairway or whatever, and it looks so sharpy and fake. But in the Spanish version it moves so fast and it looks kind of like a real spider. And one of the smaller details is more or less filmed on the same locations but with small deviances, but it's essentially it's basically the same movie, and I thought that was cool. So anyway, thanks for listening and watching, and take care.